And good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to another episode of Think and Grow Rich Mastermind. All right. And good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to another episode of Think and Grow Rich Mastermind with the persistence principle is what we're sharing today. And my name is Ann McNeil, and I'm the Master Wealth Builder, helping to build stronger and better lives and businesses. And I am very excited to be here with you again, talking about Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. But I have a question. Do you know what the formula is for success? Do you know what the formula is for success? Well, in preparing for the podcast today, I came up with a formula from lots of reading, lots of different books, and lots of different opinions on persistence. And I came up with this idea that success equals a burning desire plus concentration plus persistence and imagination. That is my formula for success. A burning desire. Yes, your burning desire. When you mix your burning desire with your concentration of thought in silence, with your imagination and persistence, I think that that's a formula for success. What about you? What do you think? How do you spell persistence? And in the reading, I came to this idea that persistence is also called a state of mind. So, what state do you live in? Do you live in the state of California? Do you live in the state of Georgia? How about the state of New York? How about the state of Florida? Well, regardless of what physical state you live in, what about your state of mind? Yes, let's talk about your state of mind, because your state of mind is also a state that you live in. Have you ever thought about that? No, you haven't? Well, think about it for a second. The sustained effort that is so necessary for you to have success is called faith in action, which is also called persistence. But it is also called a state of mind. And Napoleon Hill tells us in the 8th step toward riches that persistence is also the essential factor for transmuting your desire into its monetary equivalent, or it may be a material desire you have. Whatever it is that you are desiring, I contend that it is also desiring you. But you must build the wall of persistence all around your mind. Yes, your mind. Because you see, your willpower plus your desire, when you properly combine the two, you can't beat it. You cannot beat it. This is what we know as persistence. And I would be remiss if I did not ask you to please remember to comment, like, and share this podcast, but also remember to subscribe. This is the Think and Grow Rich International Mastermind formatted program to help us week by week as we come on and share a different principle of the 13 principles. We share a different principle per month. And this month, we're wrapping up the principle of persistence. And again, I really think that when you use your persistence, you will become unbeatable, but use it to do what? And that is where your burning desire comes in. Well, today, like every other day that we come on and we share our Saturday guests, we have another great guest for you today. And I'm going to ask our guest to come on to the front of the studio and just let's welcome her, Miss Karem Zafra-Vera. Miss Vera, good morning. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Miss McNeil. How are you? It's an honor to be here with you. Thank you for
Listen,
having me.
listen, and you already know it's an honor for me to be here with you this morning because without you, this will be a very different show. Because for those of you that know, we usually have co-hosts today, and we're it today. But let me just share with you a little bit about Karem. She is the CEO and founder of Next Level Consulting and the brand Mindful with Karem. And Karem, and I'm saying Karem is Kareem or Karem?
Karem.
Karem. Let's say it right. Let's say it right, Karem. As an entrepreneur leader, author, podcaster, and speaker, she empowers others through spiritual coaching and personal development. She's also a certified founding global coach with the Napoleon Hill Institute. And we had a really good conversation about the Institute this morning. Again, welcome, Karem, to the podcast this morning. And can you just take a moment and share with us a little bit about your early beginnings? What brings you here? And then we'll get to the book before we go to our 13 principles.
Absolutely. Thank you, Miss McNeil. Yeah, my early it was interesting. I got introduced to the laws of attraction. That's honestly how I started my journey in personal development. And it was something that called into my heart, and I practiced it. And at that time, I was a mediator. I had my own practice for 18 years. And so, but there was always something within me that was seeking more, and I really wasn't sure what it was. And it's, like anything that we really come into life really profound and that is life changing, it's because there is something in our lives that led us there. There was sometimes it's painful seasons in our lives. And for me, it was that. And it was when my father passed away that I transitioned from what I used to do to what I do now. And it was in that process where I discovered Think and Grow Rich, Bob Proctor, that led me into the Napoleon Hill, knowing about Napoleon Hill, knowing about Think and Grow Rich. And I dived in when I realized that I can study this information, that I can, I loved listening to the information, applying the information, and then to know that I can change people's lives through with this information, that to me was it was a seal deal. And so what I decided to do was to become a coach. And I stepped into coaching. And I think, today you mentioned talking about persistence. And I think for me, boy, the past couple of years has definitely been due to the persistence and the love that I have for this information, for this knowledge, and the love that I have for other people that I know that their lives can change so drastically when we practice everything that we're learning here, everything that we're going to talk about today. And that's how I really started. That's how I began. And it's taken me on a journey of self-discovery, because I think that it's through our own experiences that we're able to impact others, right? It's through our own lessons and our own seasons. And so that's just very briefly, that is where I'm at. And now I work with the Napoleon Hill Institute. I have my own practice, but I'm also a coach with the Napoleon Hill Institute. And it is a privilege to be here and then having this conversation with you, um, with, the book, Think and Grow Rich. So, yeah.
Well, I have to give a special shout out, which I just did inside the chat on YouTube. We want to welcome all of our regular YouTube listeners, Lynn Whitfield, VLyn, Vinny, Doretha, and of course, Lewis. Good morning, and thank you so very much for this introduction to Miss Vera. It is going to be another phenomenal podcast today. And so we've talked a little bit about the Institute and shared a lot of the similarities between what we do here at the International Mastermind Association and what the Institute does in terms of your programming. Now, if you could just share with us, how did you come into the book? If you can go back there just for a moment
Mhm.
and share with us that first experience when you began to realize, before we get to the principle, but let's talk about the book
Mhm.
itself and the mindset you were in the beginning and the mindset you began to develop as you persisted through the book.
Mm. Oh my gosh, that was so good. I began, so interesting when I started with the laws of attraction, I was listening to a lot of influencers, but my core education with Think and Grow Rich came from my late mentor, Bob Proctor. And so it was through his teachings and his dedication and his philosophy around, because everything that he taught was always based on the book, Think and Grow Rich. And so when I discovered the book, when I discovered the chapters, when I started diving into the chapters, you know, and you mentioned the mindset before and the mindset that started to evolve. And I think one of the beautiful things is that when we tap into personal development, we tap into these principles, when we tap into self-discovery, I think the one of the most liberating feelings is the sense of um, ownership of that we can create and that we can design our lives. And when you tap into something like this, when you haven't been on it, you start to see results in such a speed, because it's so the opposite of what you're accustomed to living your life. You're accustomed to living from the outside influence and reacting. And when you start to understand the process of what it is to understand the thought that you're having and why you're having that emotion, where is it coming from, and the power that we have within ourselves to be selective with our thoughts, that to me was the most liberating feeling that I can still have and that I have every single day, because I get to choose how I want to feel. I get to choose in what I want to focus. And that always brings me direction. And so, and I think that's one of the biggest things when we have clarity. I didn't know my definitive purpose at that time. I was working before I tapped into the coaching industry. I was working as a mediator, and I think that was my purpose for a stage of my life. But I knew that there was something beyond me that was seeking for more. And so when we actually can describe and simplify and give acknowledgement to that clarity, then we have this purpose. We have that definitive purpose where we have direction. And so our enthusiasm, our dedication, our our perspective in everything changes, because now there is a direction and a destination that you're heading to. And so for me, that was my sense of clarity. And I think that's why I felt this liberating feeling in my heart when I found exactly what I was meant to do.
Powerful, powerful, power. And I am busy taking notes. Oh my goodness, I am busy taking notes. So let me just take a deep breath.
Mhm.
Remind all of our listeners, please remember to subscribe to the YouTube, but also while we're live, type your questions and comments in the chat on YouTube. And I want to go back to the question that I asked in the very beginning. When I asked everybody, what state do you live in? And I'm not talking about your physical state. I'm really referring to your state of mind. And the book shares with us, and the principle shares that persistence is a state of mind. And Ms. Vera, what you're doing in sharing your story, you're sharing with us your state of mind in terms of being persistent,
Mm.
persistent from program to program to program until you landed right where you needed to be, right here as a part of this Napoleon Hill Institute and we talked about the ladies before, and we're going to talk a little bit about the program that you're working on, liberating feeling. I love that. But let me go quickly to our 13 principles, since I will be hosting myself today. And if you have a desire for a better quality of life in every area of your life, I would encourage you, like Ms. Vera has just shared, live in this book and these principles. There's so many additional books and podcasts and conferences and things that we can go to and participate in, but many of them have their foundation in the laws of success or Think and Grow Rich or some of the many, many different books that have been written, but the principles are all the same. The principles of success are basically all the same. And so with that thought in mind, we're going to share with you the 13 principles and ask you to think about what state of mind are you in, and are you living in the state called persistence? All right. What state of mind are you in, and are you living in the state of mind called persistence? So let's listen to these 13 principles.
Number 1 is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step 2 is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step 3 is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically, but we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the mastermind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the wild, wild west days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
All right, now there you have it, the 13 principles. And if you're just joining us, we are speaking today with Miss Karem Zafra-Vera, and she's the CEO and founder of Next Level Consulting and the brand Mindful with Karem. She's also a certified coach with the Napoleon Hill Institute, and she is, I would like to say, an associate of Luis Jimenez, which we just had last week, a phenomenal friend. But change, she says, is her mantra. And change is inevitable, but personal growth is a choice. We'll all agree with that. This reflects Bob Proctor's wisdom and her commitment to guiding individuals toward their highest potential. And I want to read something that came in the chat from Wyman. He said, how has being an active foundation member and coach enhanced your ability to benefit from the principles of the book, Think and Grow Rich? I think that question's for you.
Absolutely. And hello to everybody joining us right now. Thank you, Ms. McNeil. I saw the question, and I think that before I stepped into the Napoleon Hill Institute, it was a general, even though I was studying Think and Grow Rich, and but there's so many other mentors that I was also studying, that when I really stepped into the founding, into the Institute, it created a deeper foundation with the principles. I started to implement the principles where I was becoming more aware of what I was doing. So when I say, and the difference between that is this, because I study other mentors as well, I bring in all this information. And then I realized that with Napoleon Hill, with Think and Grow Rich, the principles were all embedded into everything that I was studying. So I became more aware, and I was able to see when I'm speaking to a client, I'm able to reflect of which principle or the lack of the principle that they are using or that they are in need of in order to expand and have a better understanding of the experience that they are having in their lives or in their chapters. And so for me, the principles have become my main tools to go to when I am in resistance, when I am in doubting, when I'm feeling fear, when I'm recognizing it. So here's a perfect example. We may feel fear of something, but if we don't recognize what are the 7 levels of fear, and how much easier is it for you to grasp what you're really fearing and breaking it down to the ridiculous and understanding why that is a normal aspect of us being humans and having that level of fear. But when we can identify it, we remove power from that is holding us back. And so studying Think and Grow Rich has allowed me to simplify the process, to grasp easier which principle am I lacking in, or which principle do I want to bring in and enhance and modify the experience that I'm having. Does that make sense?
Not only does it make sense, it connects the dots for all of us who've been in this book and these principles, gosh, for some days, some weeks, some months. And I'm looking at Lynn Whitfield, who started on this journey with me, gosh, almost 40 years ago. Yes, Lynn, almost 40 years ago for some of us. And it is the learning from the fear to transmute that fear into the faith that is desired to achieve that goal.
Absolutely.
And so we've heard that, different people call fear different things. Somebody said that, I forget the cereal, something about that, fear is the something of champions. If somebody could put that in the chat, I don't remember exactly what the point is. But I did an exercise for one of my clients years ago from my own life experience. And I began to realize my own fears. And I'm so glad you shared that question, Wyman, and Ms. Vera, your response. It just reminds us that fear really is faith turned upside down.
Absolutely.
Exercise that I began to use with my clients years ago was I would take whatever it is that I'm fearing, and I looked at how does fear become a reality. It is said that fear, if you back it up, it starts with indecision.
Mm-hmm.
That indecision over time starts with doubts. And I tell people that, fear and doubt marry and they have a baby called, indecision and doubt marry and they have a baby called fear.
I love that.
Because what I would do then is I would take just a sheet of paper and I would create a column. And I would say, what is the decision that I am not making? What is this indecision, right? And I would draw a column. I put a date, then a column, the indecision. And what am I doubting about that indecision, which came out of a decision I needed to make and I did not make the decision. But by not making the decision, the indecision caused me to doubt the decision.
Exactly.
And over time, they started to crystallize. And I found that through my clients researching this process, it began over time to crystallize over time into fears.
Absolutely.
And that was so, such a revolutionary act for me, first to go through. And it's exactly what you shared. Oftentimes when we are coaching or consulting with clients, when we've been there, done that, sometimes many times, you can connect so very well to understand which principle and the formula in the book or other resources that you use personally. A lot of times it's personal experience to help them overcome. But I want to go back to something we talked about that was so exciting for me. And for those of you like Doretha and others who have been a part of our Clarity Mastermind, and even Wyman, we host what's called a $1 Million Mastermind with the National Speakers Association for Black Speakers. And I've been coaching that for over 12 years now, twice a year. And what we discussed before the podcast started, I'm going to ask Ms. Vera if she would be willing to share that, because I think that the Institute is a powerful organization that is creating a platform to get the principles of Napoleon Hill's philosophy out into the world, all over the world. And there are many individuals like Lewis and like Ms. Vera and others, Johnny Lloyd and Leffert, and so many others who are utilizing this process in order to help people have a mindset shift. But what was interesting is that as we were sharing before the podcast started, I'm going to ask Ms. Vera if she would be willing to share. The process is exactly the same process. And it's just it's success principles. But I talked about, the Institute, and I asked, she was sharing. I think we started talking about, let me see what you called it.
It's self-confidence camp.
It is called
it's a self-discipline, self-discipline camp that we were talking. Yes, self-discipline camp that we were talking about.
Yes. And when she started describing the self-discipline camp, 90+% is exactly the same thing. And Doretha, this is for you. So pay close attention. But it's exactly the same thing that we do in our 30-day challenge that we do inside of the McNeil Factor Clarity Mastermind. So,
Oh,
Louis,
nice.
yes. So, Louis, you can take notes in the chat and ask the questions in the chat. So, could you please, if you don't mind, sharing that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And so what I was sharing with Miss McNeil was um, we were finding, well, we is too many people, but our founder of the Napoleon Hill Institute first initially started out with the way that how can we impact people to get into a discipline, to cultivate discipline within themselves so that they can actually learn how to design and create their lives, and how important it is for us to do that on a daily basis in the mornings. And so she began what we call now, that is, we have it in all the time zones, the self-discipline camp. And the self-discipline camp is an opportunity where you come in at 5:30 in the morning and you are meditating, we're visualizing, and we are doing affirmations. That first half an hour is so powerful. Why? Because when we meditate, we bring silence into our core, right? We open up. If we give ourselves that permission, we open up ourselves to receive those inspired thoughts. That when we have our definitive purpose clear, when we have an idea of what it is that we want, then we're opening up the space to receive those inspired thoughts. Visualizing is such a key, and it's right. It's one of the principles. Visualizing. We understand that everything is created twice, and first is in our minds, in our imagination, in order for us to hold it in our hand. And so we go through meditation, visualization, we say affirmations. How many? The auto suggestion. What is that auto suggestion? That internal conversation you're having to elevate yourself. And then we go into reading our self-confidence formula, which is what is the decision and what are you anchoring yourself to on a daily basis. We write our gratitude. We write our gratitude, recognizing, the abundance around us, and how and why do we have gratitude for that we are describing. Also bringing in the ability to be grateful already for what you have already claimed in your life. And that is a belief, right? Believing that if you visualize that, if you have that desire, then it is yours to experience. And you're the only responsible person to bring that experience into your life by cultivating the idea and being grateful. And that gratitude creates faith within you. And so after that, we write our definitive purpose. We always focus on a definitive purpose, that burning desire. Because once we have clarity of that burning desire, we have directions and we have everything within our power to lead towards that burning desire. Because when you're visualizing and meditating on that definitive purpose, you are cultivating that to receive those inspired thoughts, the ideas. You tap into those dimensions of the like-minded individuals that are elevated, and that's how people, opportunity, and circumstances always come to us. So we cultivate every area of our soul, I would say, so that we can actually know and move throughout our day with an intention. That's the other thing we do. We set the intention of what it is that we want for the day, because it brings us closer to being open to seeing the opportunity that is showing up, because you're cultivating and tapping into your definitive purpose. And then afterwards, what we do is we study for about 5 to 10 minutes, Earl Nightingale, either the magic word, the strangest secret, and we finish the call. It's an hour call, and we finish the call by collaborating, just having a group discussion of what was the impact that you felt today, especially from the lesson that we heard. And so this is the camp that we do Monday through Fridays in all time zones, and it is I would say, is the beginning stages to introduce people to the study, to introduce people to personal development, introduce people into the discipline of how to create habitual behaviors that are elevating us towards towards that success and towards that whatever you call success for yourself, right? But that is leading you towards that destination of that definitive purpose. And so that's how we ended up opening the time zones different, and our institute holds all time zones at 5:30 in the morning in all time zones. So, and Luis and I, along with Brenda Lee's, we lead the Spanish division. And so we get to do it in Spanish for our Latin speakers. And so it's a privilege, Ms. McNeil. It really is, to be able to see the transition of people coming in at the beginning and having difficulty meditating, or having difficulty not knowing what their purpose is, or not knowing what they're meant to do, and feeling confused, to all of a sudden, through the consistency, because it's a 30-day consistency, right? We launch the self-discipline camp every 30 days with a new goal. And so it's the consistency of, and then you start to see the evolution of each individual and their faith, how it's been cultivated, how it's been building on. And I think it's a beautiful process for us to be witnesses of.
Oh my goodness, what an honor. Oh, Doretha, you got to say something in the chat. Miss Vera and Luis Jimenez, this is exactly what we do. When I tell you, this is exactly what we do in our McNeil Factor Clarity Mastermind. And I am so glad we had this conversation before the podcast, because the principle we're discussing today is persistence. And what we just heard is how you can really build persistence by 30 days. It's like lifting weights for 30 days, but they're weights of the mind, of the heart, of the spirit. And just imagine if you were doing this year after year, year after year. And like I say, for myself, it's been since 1979. I have an exercise that I do called a daily date with myself. And many of the items that you just described, actually, I wrote a book called My Daily Date with Myself, and it is a journal. And I share with my clients, because exactly what you just talked about is a way to exercise not just the mind, but the heart, the spirit, and your faith like a muscle. And so I am so excited, because when I think about the lives that you are touching, but you see, the key for many of us is, are you willing to be persistent with the spirit of excellence until you know, let's be clear now. And Ms. Vera, I think you may agree with this. It's not a destination. I have some clients who they had great progress and they stopped. Now we're not gonna call your names. You know who you are. This is a journey.
A journey, it is.
It never ends. And people say to me, "Oh my goodness, how can you be in the same book?" You know, I'm not the same. The words didn't change, but every time I look at them, I see myself differently. Okay.
That's so powerful, Ms. McNeil. It's true. It's this every time you read, and I think this is why you've been reading it for 40 years. Bob Proctor read it for 60 something years, 67 years, because it's not about reading the same book. It's about the version of you unfolding and your evolution. Your state of awareness is going to be different the second time and the third time that you read it. And every time is going to be even more profound, because you've discovered more about yourself in the process. And that's what people don't understand. I feel that they say, well, why would you read a book more than one time? Because you're a different version. Your understanding is different. And because your understanding is different, you experience life differently with it. And I love that. I love that. And we do that in our daily study group. We read the books 2 or 3 times because of it, because there's an emphasis. And I learned that from my late mentor, Bob Proctor.
Powerful, 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 powerful. Oh my goodness. Listen, I think most of you by now know that We normally have 3 hosts, that's co-hosts. The blessing in disguise here is just that it is so empowering. It is so empowering to connect in the spirit. And so whether it's one, I've been here by myself with no guests before, whether it's 2 of us like it is today, whether it's 3 or 4, the connecting of the spirit with like minds and like spirits, elevating, if you will. And that's what we're doing here. We're elevating. I like one of the books I like reading is U Squared, where he talks about a quantum leap.
I
And
love that book.
yes, and we're having a quantum leap in our mindset, helping each other in the spirit of service to go to the next level. And I like to always share and tell Don Green, the president of the foundation for Napoleon Hill, I say, thank you for keeping the dream alive. The dream started with Andrew Carnegie, and Napoleon Hill picked it up. And there's millions of us all over the world that have used this philosophy for personal growth and development. But are you willing to answer the call? And I don't know who I'm talking to, but I'm talking to somebody. I want you to ask yourself the question, are you willing to persist and answer the call? Miss Vera and Luis, they have answered the call. And I'm going to ask you right now if you would please share about the event that you're hosting, because I think that it is phenomenal what you're planning on doing, because this philosophy, the more it is taught around the world, the more I think we tend to come together as one spirit.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So in our so I'm part of a foundation called Heart, Mind, Money, and it's where we heal the heart, we educate the mind, and that's how we support and make money, right? And it's a woman's foundation, but it has a founding principle of the Napoleon Hill Institute, because the founder is our president in the Spanish division, and her name is Perla Tamés Casanovas. And so she has not only a number of chapters, but everything that she's now integrating is Napoleon Hill. She used to be what we would call her, and when I met her the first time, we would say, you're an unconscious competent. Like, you practice the principles, and she didn't know that she was practicing the principles. And now she has literally anchored into the principles. She can identify the principles. And so every chapter that we launch now has the foundation of the studies of the principles of Napoleon Hill. So it's my pleasure that I am now launching the Miami chapter of Miami Manhood, and it is a bilingual event. And we are having our first event, having also our beautiful guest and founder, Perla, with us on September 25th. At the Pani Bistro in Aventura Mall. For all of those around that know the area, we're going to be there. We're going to launch this beautiful event that is not only educative, but it is a place where women will be heard, will be seen, will be educated, and will have opportunities and platforms to evolve. And so this is the event. I'm super honored to be part of it. And it's called Reclaim Your Power. Thank you for putting it up, Ms. McNeil. And I invite all the women. All women are invited to this event. It is our launch, and we're gonna continue having it every 2 months to empower women, to educate them, like I said, to understand what the principles are, to give them the tools to be their authentic selves, and to give them that level of faith and bravery to stand up and do what they're meant to do here. So I'm super honored to be hosting this.
all right. Thank you so very much. And for those individuals who are interested, please, we're going to put, Ms. Vera is going to put the link in the chat on YouTube. And hopefully you were able to scan the QR code that I had on the screen, but it's going to be a phenomenal event. And the reason I know it's going to be phenomenal is because she is phenomenal.
Oh, thank you. So are you. It's amazing. I think the best thing out of being in this type of community, in this type of field, is the people we get to connect and expand our consciousness with. And I think that's priceless.
Oh, I love that. Expanding the consciousness. Wow. Let me go to the YouTube for a second and make sure that we honor those of you that are here. Diane, good morning. Wyman, I think, had another question or comment. Colette, Portia, good morning. Shannon, just saw you yesterday and you did say you're going to show up. Thank you. Wyman had another comment and he said, when you experience life while observing, viewing it through the lens, filters of the Think and Grow Rich principles, fears subside. Clarity is magnified. And life, oh, that's powerful. You should tweet that. Life is simplified. Yes. Let's say that again. Thank you, Wyman. Wyman says, when you experience life while observing, viewing it through the lens and the filters of the Think and Grow Rich principles, fears subside. Clarity is magnified and life is simplified. And of course, he is the wisdom broker. So powerfully said, powerfully said. And you just reminded me of something, Wyman. Every day for years, I have thousands of these, I would write in the margin of my journal whenever a thought would come up, and based upon whatever I was reading, the intuition, if you will. And that's another concentration subject for another day. But I would write in the margin of my journal, not to mix it up with whatever I was writing. And I began to learn how to separate my thoughts. So something like what Wyman just said, I would write it in the margin. And this is what it looks like. I wrote this book called This is Living. It's a daily journal. And I took not all of them, but many of them, of those reflections, and I wrote them, and I published a book with them in it. And I just want to just read this one that I am reflecting this morning myself. And it says, and we're talking about persistence, and I think oftentimes we don't think about how do you really persist in your daily life and your daily actions. And this one says, today, tell it what you want. Your subconscious mind only knows what you tell it. Your subconscious mind only knows what you allow others to tell it. Your subconscious mind only knows what you allow circumstances to tell it. You should tell it what you want. And when we talk about being persistent, I would challenge each and every one of us, be persistent in telling your own mind exactly what you want from life, from your health, from your wealth, from your family, from your relationships, from all of your affairs. Just be persistent with that and you'd be amazed at the impact it will have. Well, it's almost that time where we begin to wind down. I want to share with everybody, every year we host, and a lot of what we've shared, every year we host an annual meeting for your life. It is not a conference. Let me make sure I say that. It is not. No. And I think for those of you, Wyman and Lynn, and so many of you that have come, you have to let everybody know this is not a conference. It is a meeting for your life. And it is usually the first or second Saturday, Friday, Saturday in the year in January. And this year is going to be held in Boca Raton. And let me just go to the website for 1 second and share with all of you, because I really want to encourage all of you to consider registering now. Space is limited, and we do know how that goes. This is the website. It is internationalmasterminders.com. Internationalmasterminders.com is the website. And we would encourage you to go there and register. These are some of the meetings that we've had in the past, some photos. This year, it will be held on the 3rd and the 4th of January 2025, this year coming up. January 2025, the 3rd and the 4th of January. That third is the Friday, and on that Friday, we basically have an open mic where individuals, children, everybody just come and they share their wins for the year. You get a minute because we can easily have 100 people coming through that Friday night. But Saturday, we ask you to bring your life in writing. We focus on 10 areas of your life as we use these principles from Think and Grow Rich. We encourage you to write goals in your spiritual, your family, your financial, your health, your education, your personal development, your business or your career, the civic, the recreation, and the creative area of your life. And we ask you to write a goal for 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 40, and I'm in my 40 plus year right now. And when I started, I could not see past a year, let alone 5 years. And I looked up and it was already 15 years later. And so we've had over 1,000 people to actually come with their families. And that's what I love about doing this, is that we encourage and we invite families to join us. Just imagine, though, a family that not only prays together and stays together, but also a family that is masterminding together. Can you just imagine what would happen in small groups and large families who actually mastermind together? So I am just so honored to have hosted this for so many years. And then on Sunday, every Sunday, I also host, just like this, a group of children for an hour from 1:30 to 2:15, sometimes 2:30, depending upon how many children we have, where they are reading Think and Grow Rich, 2 pages per week. And we discuss it. Yes. And so this philosophy, Vera, you have been a phenomenal. And thanks again, Louis, for encouraging her to join us today. But when you stop and think about the family affair and mindset, and I want to just quickly, if I can just share some of my aha moments, we're going to ask you to share your takeaway, Miss Vera, from the podcast. Yes, please. And then I'll share mine. We're going to also ask you to tell people how they can connect with you.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, you saying that you do this also on Sundays for kids, that's so powerful, so incredibly powerful. I congratulate you because that we need all our generations, our new coming generations to live life differently, to stop the traditional, habitual beliefs and behaviors. And it's only through this level of work that we do and that we invest in that we're able to make those changes. So thank you for that. I definitely will connect my kids because I have 3 kids. They're teenagers, they're young adults, but they still need it.
I'll gladly receive them. We do have teenagers that join us on Sunday, and it's quick. And if we have many, we put them in a breakout together to read and discuss what they're reading. It's powerful. Thank you.
My takeaway with this podcast, I love the fact of the persistence that you have had, Ms. McNeil, 40 years in the reading. Like I don't know anybody else except for my late mentor that has studied the book and that has dedicated their time to really, because you're an example of how much you can actually speak about a principle, and every single time there is more elevated information. There's more to talk about. There's never enough. We can talk about persistence. We can talk about, any of the principles, and yet for hours and hours. So my takeaway is we're always evolving and there's always growth in it. And I think that you're a perfect example, as many people in that are constantly here listening, the ones that come on and their guests, this the persistence. Persistence is, for me, is just the saying of yes to your life. That's persistence. That doesn't matter the season, it doesn't matter the result. It's you showing up each and every day for you. For you, and because you show up for you, you show up for others and you elevate others. And so that, to me, this is an example of that.
Oh, wow. Thank you so very kindly for that. Now, how can people reach you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You can follow me. My website is mindfulwithkarem.com, or on Instagram, Karem Zafra-Vera. And everything in my social media is around Mindful with Karem. It's about just being present with yourself. My email is mindfulwithkarem@gmail.com. So please reach out to me. It would be great to have a further conversation with anyone. So thank you, Ms. McNeil, for having me here, for giving me this opportunity to not only have an amazing conversation with you, but for your audience. It's always a privilege, and grateful to Luis for letting me know to have this opportunity, inviting me here.
Absolutely. Now, for those who came on a little late, we are speaking with Karem. I want to make sure we spell that. So if you connect with her, it is Karem,
Yes.
not that other word. I'm not going to say it because then it's Karem, mindful with Karem @gmail.com. That is how you can connect with her. Now, what about a website, Karem?
It's Mindful with Karem. I'm sorry, www.mindfulwithkarem.com.
Okay, and you all heard that. So Karem, please drop that in the chat on YouTube, because you will never know who in the future may be listening to this podcast and they
Absolutely.
want to connect with you. We want to make sure they can find you. And, sometimes we do a search and somebody else come up with a name close to ours. And it may be a while you realize you have the wrong Karem. Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Karem. Well, I want to thank you again. And for those of you that would like to connect with me and having a better quality of life, yes, in every area of your life, you can text the number 59925. That number again is 59925. And you can put the word "and" in the chat. And I'm going to change my name and I'm going to type that in the name. So if you're watching on YouTube or some other place in the future, you would text TEXT. You're going to text the number 59925. And in the chat, you would just put the word "and." That's ANN. Once you do that, we can connect, but I'll also send you my 6 steps business plan. And I've created, yes, 5 businesses from one page of this book. And when I coach my clients, we start with this one page of Napoleon Hill's book, which I have now turned into a philosophy for living. So we want to thank all of you for joining us. And remember, if you have not done so, please subscribe to the YouTube. But also, we're going to ask Karem to give us her final closing comments. And then we're going to wrap up.
So,
Karem?
yes, I think that if you're here, if you're listening, it's not only just because this is something that you do, maybe you've heard, you've been here before, but what was it that impacted you today? And whatever impacted you today, have faith that that is what you want to implement, analyze, evaluate, and take in. What is the action that you're going to do today different because of what you heard today? And I think that that is the difference between listening to things and then listening and taking action. And that is self-acknowledgement. That's always our infinite intelligence guiding us. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being here. Thank you for having me. And I invite all of you to continue to come. I know that I will be back with you, Miss McNeil.
Well, we're going to count on that, because after this podcast is over, I will be connecting with you regarding your children. And if any of you who are listening to us would like to have your children to join us, you can go to Eventbrite, for example, and you can just put in Think and Grow Rich Youth Mastermind, and you can register there. And you can also, when you text the number 59925, you can put, in the chat, and you can say, hey, look, I want to connect with you for the children. And we can do that. And also, if you're interested in being on the podcast, you can also put that comment in the chat when you text me at 59925. But until then, Miss Vera, thank you so very kindly. This has been phenomenal. And I literally have 10 pages. And for those of you, I'm going to type my comments in the chat on the social media. But even the closing comments in terms of challenging all of our guests to consider, what are you going to do next? What action are you going to take? Analyze, evaluate, what actions are you going to take? And self-acknowledgement, powerful, because oftentimes we look for validation and acknowledgement from others. But what about being in a position and in a state of mind, if you will, where you're willing to self-acknowledge? Studies of the principle, expanding. Oh my gosh, this is phenomenal. Listen, everybody, as you know, we could be here for another hour.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can, but we're going to have you come back, Ms. Vera, because I'm looking at the notes that I've taken, and I can just imagine the notes that many of our guests have taken. And thank you so much, both of you, you and Louis, for sharing with us the Napoleon Hill Institute Self-Discipline Camp. Meditate, visualize, affirmations, auto-suggestion, reading the self-confidence formula. And I will share something with you. We do, as a part of the McNeil Factor Clarity, we write the self-confidence formula. Yes, we write it and we've memorized it.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so we write it, we memorize it, and we listen to it on one of the YouTubes. Write the gratitude. Be grateful, thankful. Write your self-discipline, your definiteness of purpose and direction. I have many notes. And oftentimes we don't look at the difference between your definite chief aim and your definite purpose, and they're not the same. And so we can go so many places with this, but again, we want to thank all of you for listening to us today, and we will encourage you to join us every Saturday right here at the Think and Grow Rich International Mastermind Podcast, where we have phenomenal guests joining us every week. And with that, we're going to end the podcast, and we're going to say to all of you, please remember to continue to think